Socialism violates at least 3 of the basic 10 commandments for those who still care. It makes government into God. It suggests that you can steal from people if you vote for it. And it says that it is good to be covetous of your neighbor's ass. Right? For Bill Clinton, it has a different meaning. But the problem for conservatives is we never actually argue on a moral level. We're constantly arguing on an effective level, on an efficiency level. And that's a problem because the left always argues on the moral level. In the end, they always say, sure, my ideas don't work, but they're fair. They're fair, right? And so what you have to say, the only way to come back to that from that is to say, no, your ideas are not fair, your ideas are theft. Your ideas are theft. You don't get to steal from other people just because you want their stuff. That's the only way to beat that argument. Do it on the moral level. Otherwise, they can always argue, well, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. Okay, there's no way to come back from that because, again, they're operating in unicorn land with gumdrop rainbows and fairy skies. Right?
So what is socialism? Socialism is the political economic system where the state owns the means of production, where it controls, primarily through ownership. And that's kind of the subtle difference between socialism and fascism. In socialism, the state owns the means of production. Under fascism, they control it through regulations. So, but they're very similar. Both are forms of real statism, where the state manages the economy. The state controls the economy. It tells people how much they can make. It redistributes wealth on a massive scale, and it regulates and controls what gets produced and at what prices it gets produced. And, you know, this country is clearly drifting towards socialism, that it is drifting away from a system where the government has no involvement in the economy and leaves the economy, the distribution of wealth, the creation of wealth, the, you know, prices, what products get made, all of those issues leaves them to individual choices, voluntary choices in individuals, and we're moving slowly over the last 100 years to a system where the government controls all of these aspects. We're still, I think, a long way in the United States from out-and-out socialism, where the government controls all of them, but we're on that slippery slope, and we're clearly heading in that direction, and very little that our politicians seem to be doing or have done in the last 100 years, even the better ones, seems to slow down the slide down this.
Nordic countries are, by and large, extraordinarily ethnically homogenous. So they're not comparable and culturally homogenous as well. So Vermont looks a lot like Norway. Right? Bernie Sanders' philosophy works in Vermont and it works in Norway, but it only works for a temporary period of time because Vermont doesn't have its own defense budget, and really neither does Norway. Right? We've been paying for the Nordic countries' defense budgets for a long time. Also, it's worthwhile noting that the taxes in these countries are extraordinarily high, and the countries are going bankrupt anyway. So for about a 15-year period, 20-year period, the Nordic countries have been experiencing extraordinarily slow growth, which has led them to actually elect more right-wing governments on economics and deregulate their economies, because it turns out people don't like paying twice the amount that it costs for a normal car. Right? The income tax rate in places like Denmark for middle-class people, not for upper-class people, for middle-class people is like 60%. So, you know, it's easy for students to say 60% sounds good, but you all go to Yale, which means that eventually you'll have a job that pays you enough that you'll be paying a high percentage of your income in taxes, and it ain't that much fun. There's a reason that Denmark, all these countries are now turning away from this, and they've been living off the back of America paying for their defense budget for a very long time. So you have the privilege of not having to pay your own defense budget. You also have a group of what can best be described as upper education people who have grown up in Western countries with a particular set of values. And socialism, at least in the Nordic way, not full government ownership of resources, but high redistribution of income, you know, that is capable of lasting for a certain period of time, but even there it collapses.
That falls apart under any type of regulations, and socialism regulates everything. It regulates every aspect of that. So the human mind collapses, the ability to reason collapses, and therefore the ability of the individual to take care of himself, to pursue his values, to choose the life that he wants to choose, and to produce in order to facilitate that life, all of that is destroyed. So socialism is evil because it attacks human life. It attacks our reasoning capacity. It attacks our values, our self-interested values, our ability to pursue our own life, and it tells us that we have to sacrifice everything, our life, our wealth, our values, what we enjoy doing, everything for some cause. You know, and depending on the type of socialism, it might be a different cause. The poor, the meek, the proletarian, whatever. And that's just evil. That's just wrong. So if you believe that right is about that which is consistent with human life, that which promotes human life, brings about human flourishing, then you have to reject everything about socialism. Socialism is the opposite. It creates a society which is basically dead. It's dead spiritually, it's dead economically, it's dead from a values pursuit perspective. And if you want to see this, you could have. Not that long ago, socialism was alive and thriving and well, in Eastern Europe and in the Soviet Union, and it was horrible. It was destructive of the human spirit. And when you saw the faces of those young people who tore down the Berlin Wall, you saw what they imagined was possible once they shrugged off socialism, once they dispensed with socialism. So we've had a model, we've seen it, and of course, just in terms of sheer destruction, think about the human lives. Think about the lives lost under Mao or under Stalin. The tens of millions of people that just died.